Cheers.
Cool. Well, yeah, it's great to meet all of you guys. Thank you so much for having me and for coming out. Some of you have heard a version of my story before in Patterson or Manteca or elsewhere in Turlock, and so be familiar around with some of you guys, but I'll just kind of start from the beginning and share a little bit about my personal story and why I think this is really important and what exactly I'm trying to do, and the issues that I think are super critical for this region and for this district. And a little bit about me. So I'm, a fifth generation Central Valleyite. My great-great-grandfather came over on a wagon train from Wisconsin in 1850. He came 2,000 miles in search of gold over lots of mountains, and terrible snow, and some disastrous conditions for people that played the Oregon Trail. I don't know if his oxen died fording a river, if anybody in his party died of dysentery, but I know it was hard. And he did it because he knew he could find a better life for his family here in the Central Valley. He actually ended up in Manteca, becoming a peach farmer. And my family's been here ever since. I grew up here in Turlock, literally just a couple of blocks away from where we are, over on Monte Vista and Olive. And I went to the public school system, ended up going to Modesto High. My dad worked as the optometrist at the Ceres Walmart, for folks that grew up in Ceres. And then I got a scholarship from the Rotary Club and the American Legion to go off to Stanford and then on to Harvard Business School. And spent some time abroad, working in Kenya and then Indonesia. Got really excited about the role of technology changing lives in really poor countries. What can we do in areas where everybody has a mobile phone and nobody has a bank account? How can we actually deliver some really critical services to folks? Decided I wanted to come back home and ended up working for a couple years in business and technology, doing a whole bunch of things, but mostly around helping really small businesses scale up to be really big businesses. So the emblematic example is a company called Blue Apron. Some of you may be familiar with. It sells meal kits in a box, and you make the recipes at home. It's a big company for me, not just because it scaled from 2 guys and a dog in a garage to being a large company that many of you recognize, but also because my greatest culinary accomplishment is not burning grilled cheese. So it was a great thing for me to be able to build and have existing. It's also a company that sources, by the way, all of their nuts and fruits from here in the Central Valley. And then, of course, unfortunately, creates a lot of their jobs in New York City and in Richmond, which is where they do a lot of the packaging. So one of the big opportunities, I think, is to see what we can do to make sure the next Blue Apron is headquartered in Modesto. But that was basically what I did in my business career, and I thought it was all going to be very comfortable. I was spending a lot of time on the side working on campaigns, like many of you, and I thought that would be all well and good until November 2016 happened. And I felt like I had to get off the sidelines and serve my community. The only reason I got to where I am is because my community invested an awful lot in me, and I want to make sure I invest back in that community and create those opportunities that are not available to most kids around here. I mean, this is a district where we have twice the unemployment rate of the nation. We have 4 out of 5 kids from Modesto City schools that are on free and reduced school lunch. We have a lot of challenges, and unfortunately, I think our current leadership is making things worse, not better. The perfect example there is healthcare. We have Congressman Jeff Denham who voted for Trump Care, which is going to devastate this region. 100,000 people at last count would lose health care coverage because of that vote. It became law. And this is a very personal issue for me. My brother is one of those 100,000 people. My younger brother David is the son of, he's the adopted son of some Mexican immigrants. We adopted him at birth. He was born 10 weeks premature. He was born at Doctors Medical Center in Modesto. He spent the first 2 years of his life living in a succession of hospitals and racked up a lot of pre-existing conditions. It was, I remember my first vision of him was going and seeing him kind of wrapped up with all these tubes, and it was really heartbreaking. But thank God we had amazing insurance that was able to pay for it and make sure he's alive and a productive member of society today. But he would lose coverage because of that vote for his congressman if that became law. And I'm not a millionaire like Jeff Denham. That would bankrupt my family if there became another hospital stay because of that. I think there's a lot of people whose lives will be affected in this district and all across the country. And I think that's a really motivating force for me to say, this is a district that is being misrepresented by somebody who's putting party above his constituents. And I think we can do better. And it's not just healthcare, right? I mean, we talk a lot about immigration. We have 40,000 undocumented immigrants in this district, folks that have been around here for decades, are the economic and social fabric of our community, people that went to, their sons and daughters went to high school and elementary school with me. They run our small businesses, they serve in our military, and ICE deportations are up 40% in the last 6 months. And that's not the America that I want to be a part of. And it's not just that issue. I mean, it's also immigration. We talk about the Muslim ban, right? I mean, growing up, the woman that lived across the street from me, my Nana, was a Syrian. She was a really important figure in my life. There's a huge Syrian community, as many of you know, here in Turlock. Those are refugees who left Iran in the 1970s because they were being persecuted. And thank goodness that we had an America at that time that opened its arms and said people that are in need should be able to come to our shores and be able to build businesses, to be able to live their lives free of any persecution. And unfortunately, that's not the case today. I mean, Iran is one of those countries. My Nana would be banned from entering this country if that ban continues. So I think these are really critical issues that represent some of the big gaps that I see for our presentation. But I don't think we actually win just by presenting a negative message. I think we also need to say, we have to present some sort of vision to voters and to people about what we can do better, right? I mean, it's not just a judgment, it's a careful job, it's things that we can actually change. And for me, that's mostly about economic opportunities, about upward mobility. It's about, what we can do to make sure that kids graduating from Stan State, just a couple blocks away, are having great entry-level opportunities and that they're not having trouble finding a job. And we can do that, right? I mean, we can build on our core assets here as a region, our foundation in agriculture. Companies that are building and selling to farmers should be headquartered in Modesto, not in New York City or elsewhere. And we can address some of the root causes of our issues, mostly education. What can we do to make up for the fact that 80% of kids graduating, or 80% of kids in this district graduate high school, and yet only 16% of residents have a college degree. A lot of people that graduate college here go elsewhere because they can't find opportunities that use their skills, or they don't make it to college in the first place. And we're not preparing, this district and our kids for the new economy. And I think that's a real shame. So that's basically what we're trying to do. And by the way, these issues are only magnified this week, right? Where we've seen a terrible healthcare bill move forward in the Senate. If you don't know really what it's going to do, you're not alone, neither do Republican senators. This is something that there's like 4 or 5 proposals, but we know whatever happens, it's going to be terrible. And we know the bill that Jeff Denham supported is one that's going to be devastating for us. And 2, even today, we saw Trump decide that he's going to ban transgender people from the military. I mean, I saw that this morning, and I just had this sinking pit in my stomach that this is like what our country has come to. I mean, against, by the way, the recommendation of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dunford, against what the highest-ranking military officer in the country thought was good for our military. We're going to ban the 4,000 folks that are serving their country, protecting us from just because of how they were born. So I think that's totally crazy. Let's go on. So what can we do? I mean, first of all, you guys are doing it already, right? I mean, it's 2 things. One is make sure we're activated and motivated and registering voters and getting the word out. I'm so excited by the work that you guys are doing and others, and that's going to be what it takes, right? I mean, there are 130,000 unregistered voters in this district. 130,000. That is a solvable problem. Like, we can actually turn the tide of this election. If everybody in this room registers 3 or 4 voters, we'll make a big difference. And second, we can spread the word to our friends and our family members. There's a lot of people right now that I think are turning off on politics because they don't necessarily see how it affects their life. Everybody in this room, I assume, understands how it's going to affect their life. Tell your stories. Talk about, people like my little brother who will be deeply affected and loses healthcare coverage because of this bill. Tell your own stories. Tell them to me, tell them to your friends, tell them everywhere. Because I think it's only by showcasing how misrepresented as a district we actually are and what we can do differently that we're actually going to get some change. So that's the story, and that's what I'd ask of you guys, is to tell your stories, tell me your stories, tell other people your stories, and help us get people activated and motivated to see the kind of difference that we can really make in this community. So that's what we're trying to do. So I'm sure there's like a million questions. So
we'll open it up. If you have a question,
I'll go.
raise your hand.
Yes, ma'am.
We want to I'll raise your hand. Our revolutions are members and stuff like that. I'll try to get you guys first, since this is an opportunity for you guys to get your issues out. Anyone else, though, you're all welcome to ask questions. That's why we have this kind of thing, right?
Absolutely.
Mary?
Your opening, however you want to put it, you went there about the kids going to college and getting a degree to move on. This area is not all technology degree area. When I went to high school, we had classes, there was money for education. We had classes where you could roll out of school and build a house, fix a car. You could weld a trailer. You could make things. Those are all the things we need right here, right now. And the money keeps being taken from education and put into the military. What are you going to do about that?
I agree with you. Look, I mean, so not everybody maybe should be. So what you're talking about, I think, is a systematic prioritizing of what we actually need as a district and as a country, right? I mean, and by the way, that's more important here than anywhere else. If you go to a high school in a rich district, there's 30 computer science classes, or 30 welding classes. There's a lot more resources. If you go to Modesto High, to Turlock High, there's not as much, and that's why we have a district where only 60% have college degrees. So what am I going to do? I'm going to try to fix it, right? I mean, so federal funding for education is only a small sliver of education as a whole. But we can be catalytic, right? We can say, what can we do to make sure that we can match funds from the federal government for things like training teachers that are teaching computer science, science and technology, trying to prepare kids for the new economy. Not everybody's going to be...
I think what Mary's saying...
What you're missing is we need people that swing hammers.
Yeah.
Yeah, because those are good-paying jobs, right?
Yeah.
Right there at Turlock High behind the auto shop.
You can make a life as a welder.
Yeah.
Behind the auto shop at Turlock High, there's a slab between the auto shop and the football field.
Yeah.
Every year we built a house right there and auctioned it off at the end of the year.
Yeah.
My husband rolled out of high school making a $24 an hour building houses, all those houses around the college.
Yeah.
He walked out of high school with a viable trade.
Yeah.
You don't have that anymore.
I think a lot of that is...
If I could teach, right? So the standardized testing is a big part of it, right?
Well, let me just clear a few things up. First of all, those programs do exist. They maybe don't go straight towards like a construction trade, but there are some really cool, innovative programs around here. So maybe for your next one of these meetings, you should go check out, before you go to these deals, go and check out what they're doing at Series High, the industrial technology class, and right over here at Turlock High as well. There's some really, really innovative teaching going on. It's not widespread, but what they're doing is awesome, and it could probably use some more funding and some
I hear you. I agree.
doubling of efforts.
And it's also the role of, it's the role of our schools, but it's also the role of employers to be able to go to our high schools and say, Amazon has this amazing program in some of their areas that say, we want to make sure that I think that we're talking about this in Patterson, that, what they do is they go to high schools and they say, we need people graduating high school with these skills, right? To move a forklift and do these sort of things. And we'll pay a premium for people that are graduating high school with these skills. So we need to be able to, make it so it's not just an employer here, an employer there, but these are widespread apprenticeship models that are creating a platform for people to learn relevant skills in high school so they can find a job. I totally agree with you. I think it's super important. Ultimately, how can we do it as a policy? I think we got to create incentives for more employers to do it. And I think we have to be able to go to our schools and say, how do we get more teachers? So it's not just, an amazing teacher in series, but it's every teacher that has, the ability to be able to do these industrial engineering, welding, forklift, whatever it takes, because we need people that are moving into trades. I agree with you.
I think that a lot of small businesses though would balk at the idea of taking the burden around here. A lot of them, they're independent, they build everything by themselves, and
They're stretched thin.
they're stretched thin, right?
Yeah.
It's hard not to do that. It's hard not to do that. And then on top of that, though, like the flip side of that, you said incentive. In my mind, that means taxes. Right? But it goes back to what Mary was saying, that you have a class of people here that have been devastated by the recession.
Yeah.
Absolutely devastated. So my own story, I have a lot of people have heard it. I almost lost my house during the recession. I lost all my retirement savings. You notice I don't have a working air conditioner because I haven't been able to replace it. I just been saving up the money. I had to build a new career for myself. I consider myself lucky because most people that I know that are regular members and regular friends of mine, they aren't homeowners. I have a good friend of mine who I've known since he was a kid. And he just had his first kid. He's living with his mom and his parents. They have their first daughter. They share one bedroom in that place. So how do you take care of that person?
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are the kind of people who need immediate help. And when you say kind of offering it.
Yeah, it's not just actors. Let me give you another example. So does anybody know the Opportunity Stanislaus folks that work up in Modesto? This is an awesome organization. And basically what they do, and they're also focused on small businesses, right? Where they basically say, what can we do to aggregate the works of a lot of employers and set a guaranteed curriculum that we can take to Downey High School, New Hampton High School, and say, if you study these skills, right, then you are better prepared graduating from Downey to go work at one of the 20 employers that signed up for Opportunity Stanislaus. These aren't necessarily big companies. These are small. Gallo's in it, so they're a big company. But there's also like smaller companies that are part of it. And so it's not necessarily just like, yeah, let's give somebody a tax break. It's let's make it really easy for businesses to connect to schools, tell the schools what skills they need. And so if you make it seamless, right? If you make it a whole lot of hard work, you're only going to have heroes go out and do it. We need to make it easy for mere mortals to go to school districts and say, look, these are the skills we need, and if you graduate kids that have these skills, we'll employ them. The biggest problem we have in this district, I think, is not enough economic opportunity, not enough jobs, and first of all, and not enough preparation, either in high school or in college, to take up those jobs. That is the biggest problem we have.
So,
Because where does the money come from?
well, the money comes from the ground. Like we're an agricultural company. I used to do a lot of work at dairies and almond ranches, and I see where the money's at. It's a big house, little house situation.
Yeah.
A big house, those people go out on vacations multiple times a year, and the little people who live in single room apartments, like a friend of mine who's undocumented, who his parents worked in the fields, and they had 8 kids that all shared a single family apartment over there on the west side of Turlock on the Pop Soda Crest. They're the ones who get passed up. And so I'm curious then. It seems to me that we're able to generate a lot of wealth over here, but we're exporting it.
Yeah.
We're,
So let's
we're
talk
not, we're
about
not retaining the wealth.
So when my great-grandfather had his peach orchard, he sold his peaches to Tri-Valley Growers. And they had this massive cannery in Modesto, right? If everybody remembers Tri-Valley Growers, they've actually produced 50% of all the canned peaches in the entire U.S. That used to have 10,000 jobs, right? It was the economic heart of the entire valley. And those were good jobs. Those were people not always with a college degree, but those were people that were, getting right out of school, that had, high wage because they were, basically taking the peaches and processing them. That factory now has 1,000 jobs. We've lost 90% of the jobs. Some of that maybe is because people don't eat as many canned peaches today, but most of it is because of the forces of automation and outsourcing, right? A lot of those jobs have gone away to Mexico. What can we do about it? We can put our head in the sand, like Jeff and Republicans do, and we can blame it on immigration. We can say maybe if we tax China and Mexico, somehow those jobs will come back. I don't think that's realistic. I think those processing jobs, the economic reality has changed. And what we need to do in response is we need to prepare our communities for the new economy, right? We need to say, we need to make it easy for the next Blue Apron, the companies that are built on the back of agriculture, as you highlight, to make sure that they're creating jobs here in Modesto, not somewhere else. Because we're the economic, we're the breadbasket of America. We need to make sure that people that are building on our backs aren't exporting their, profits and their wealth everywhere else.
Okay, we got a couple questions here.
Yeah.
It's more of a comment. I grew up in the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And around the time when I graduated from high school in 1980, steel was definitely on the downline. And it was devastating. And pretty much everybody in my graduating class, we left. And much to the dismay of our families, and stuff. But eventually, if anybody is familiar with the city of Pittsburgh, they did revitalize themselves. They had to reinvent themselves. They had to realize the industry that built them and made them what they were when I was a child growing up was on the decline, and they had to reinvent themselves and explore other technological options, new tech, different industries that have basically made it.
Pittsburgh is a great story. They did two
But
things.
as a mother of 5 children, okay, 4 of them are adults now, and I will tell you, each one of them, as they began to explore options and careers and where they want to go to school, one of the things that they always said, all of them, much to my disappointment, was, I don't want to go to school in this valley because people that go to school in this valley never leave, and they felt there was no opportunity for them for what they want to do. And I would like to see, definitely small businesses reaching out to schools and more. I'm drawing a blank on what it is, but education for people.
Apprenticeship, sort of.
Exactly,
Yeah.
where they hit the ground running when they come out of high school. But I would also like to see improvements as far as education and also protect other industries coming to this valley, so people like my husband and my second daughter don't have to do that, buying them and commute to the Bay Area just so they can do what they have trained their entire lives to do. And I'd like to see my kids stay home, so I can see my grandchildren, because I'm selfish.
A lot of people spend so much of their lives driving out there.
I agree. So we're going to go, let me get to that. So let's first of all talk about Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh did that by building on its core assets. It had an amazing set of schools, Carnegie Mellon, and it had a whole lot of great hospitals. And so now the entire economy of Pittsburgh has gone from coal to healthcare and education. We can do the same thing here, not necessarily healthcare and education. We can build on our assets, which are agricultural. We have 20% of jobs here. We're by far the world leader in ag. And our proximity to some of the great technology things that are happening in the Bay Area, right? Like, we have the skills. People from Tracy and Modesto know how many folks commute out here, right? You go north at 8 a.m. any day of the week, and you will see a line of cars going. So employers that come to me and say, well, I don't know if you really have the skills in Central Valley, I tell them to go look at our traffic patterns, because 70% of the city of Tracy works outside of Tracy. We have people that have skills here. What we need to do is we need to convince, employers to make sure that they're actually tapping into that, making sure that they're making the investments to make sure the kids graduating from Stan State and MJC have opportunities, and to make sure that they're actually, branching out and creating jobs, not just, call center jobs or low-wage jobs, but the great high-wage stuff, like the stuff that Anthony's doing now as a network engineer. Those are the types of things that we can do here in the Valley. And there's companies that are already starting to do it. I was meeting, a couple weeks ago with this great company.
We got another question.
Oh, sorry. I can talk about this forever, but
It's okay. So my question is, as you mentioned earlier, we see each other everywhere.
Yeah.
Not on purpose. But my question is, at a Manteca Democratic Club meeting, you stated that you were not for single payer, and at a Patterson Progressive Alliance, you stated that you were. Can you explain that? Why did you?
yeah, I don't think I said that in Manteca that I wasn't a single payer. I absolutely. So here's my policy, right? So I think I was asked about the California single payer bill, and what I said is I can't vote for that. I'm running for U.S. Congress, not for California office, so I can't vote for it.
Still the concept though applies though, right?
Agreed. So here's what I support. I think, by the way, my values on healthcare is that everybody should be covered. We need to make sure that 100% of our population, that education is a right, not a privilege. That people like my brother and many of the folks in this room and elsewhere actually have access to life-saving healthcare. And second, we got to make sure that we do it in a way that doesn't actually bankrupt our entire system, because I think that's important. That's important too. And I think the best way we do that is at a federal level. I'm a big supporter of Medicare for all. I think we should be expanding the parts of our healthcare system that work the best. We should make sure we're covering more folks that way. That has the highest patient satisfaction, and it has the lowest costs on the system as a whole, and that should be what we do. That said, it's pretty clear, if you've been following what's going on in Washington, that that's maybe not what the federal government's happening. And so you're seeing lots of great innovations happening from California. Nevada is talking about, a single payer bill. Maine is talking about a single payer bill. And I'm all for states doing whatever they can to cover as many people as possible. Ultimately, I think the federal government should be in a position to make sure we have leadership on this, because I think it creates a little bit of a tricky situation sometimes when you have one state that has access and another state that doesn't. I think everybody should have access, and the way we do it should be for Medicare. But if we can't get there, I absolutely support California doing whatever they can to
California
cover
is
folks.
often the leader of the nation, and a
Yes.
lot of innovation and a lot of bills and things that go forward. So I'm just saying that California is often the leader. A lot of times the nation is slower than we are to adapt new innovations, new technologies, new ideas, and new laws. And I think we need someone who's really strong to be that kind of leader who can do that for California, who can do that specifically for our area, which was just disproportionately reliant on the ACA and all of these things. And I don't think that California can wait for the nation, especially if we're the ones who lead in so many ways, and especially if the need is so dire that it is literally a matter of life and death. So I would like to know, do you support single payer? And if not, what are your plans?
Yeah, like I just said, I think the right way to do it is on a federal level by expanding Medicare. That's kind of what I could do. If that does not happen, and I agree with you, it doesn't look like that's where it's headed right now, and if I go, I'll fight whatever I can. But if it
So
doesn't
the answer
happen,
is no.
no. It's exactly not the answer. The answer is I absolutely think California should do whatever they can to cover their population.
What's your stance on SB 562 specifically?
Yes, California should absolutely do things, I'm not going to vote for it, but I think California should be doing anything they can to expand healthcare access for folks that are going to be left out of this healthcare bill, right? If this bill that's happening right now in the Senate passes, up to 100,000 people in this district are going to lose healthcare insurance. I don't think that's right to just say California just wipes its hands of the matters and steps back and says, that's okay. I would be really disappointed. I want California to do something, so I
That's
absolutely
what the
support it.
Democratic Party in California just did. They shelved that bill, right? They kind of washed their hands of it and said, sorry, we're going to let you guys off to the whims of whatever comes from the Trump administration. And so what do you think about what they did there?
Yeah, I think it's wrong. I think we should absolutely be able to, as a state, as you say, be a leader, right? I think the best way to do it is at the federal level. But if the federal government is going to sit back and do things that I think hurt people in this district and people across California, then it's absolutely the right and responsibility of the state to move forward and do whatever they can to fix that problem.
So hypothetically, our president gets impeached, there's a big wave in 2018, and there might be sort of a progressive kind of momentum to do this kind of thing at the federal
Fingers
level.
crossed.
But would you be supportive of a single payer solution at the federal level if that became an option?
Just because there's a lot of people who won't get it. They say, oh, it's
Yeah,
not a
I don't know how, I've said this like 5 times, I don't know how else I can say it. Yes, I believe that we should be, the best way to do it is to expand Medicare, which is already the part of our federal government that has the highest patient satisfaction and the lowest costs. And that's what we need to double down on. So yeah, I think the compromise path, in case we don't get overwhelming Democratic majority that supports it, I think we got to fix Obamacare. There's common sense fixes we can make. But if Republicans just want to burn the whole house down, we have to build a new house. We should build a house that's expanding Medicare and making sure that we're building it from ground zero to be something that covers everyone at the lowest possible cost.
My question right there, though, is saying if we don't have it, because we're never going to have 100% of control of this, and even with the majority, it seems that the Congress is just stalemated. So
Yeah.
instead of trying to give ground up front and saying we're going to fix Obamacare, because I like I said, I got laid off, I was on COBRA, with COBRA, if you've ever been on it, you have to pay for the full cost of your insurance. It's incredibly expensive. I had a shoulder surgery, so I paid for the full cost of that. Afterwards, I was on Medi-Cal, and I was on Obamacare afterwards.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why I just about lost everything.
Yeah,
So
and it
you
did
say-
save my
you say-
life,
Yeah.
but it almost
Yeah.
ruined my children's future.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it's hard for me to understand the fix Obamacare part.
And
I
I wasn't
personally
well.
think-
I was
Yeah.
alive, but I wasn't
Look.
healthy.
Yes.
I'm going to fight to do what I think we all want in this room, which is to make sure we have everyone that has healthcare access, right? That is really important to me. And I'm not going to get ground on it just because, you know, that said, if some Republican does say, I'm either going to burn the house down or fix the house, I'm going to say, let's fix the house in the right way. And the way we do that, by the way, I mean, what are the problems with Obamacare? Sometimes people talk about Obamacare fixes. I think the biggest problem with Obamacare is we have some insurance markets where there's not enough insurers that are actually delivering healthcare, right? So in some markets, we only have one insurance provider, which means they get to set the prices. That's not okay. And the reason for this is Obamacare was a compromise bill. Anybody that, you know, likes it never even saw it being made, right? I mean, it's a messy process. Nobody got what they wanted. You know, thanks to Joe Lieberman, we didn't get what we wanted necessarily, which was expansion of Medicare. And so there are common sense fixes we can make in order to expand so more insurers are entering some of these markets and it's not becoming a monopoly market in some regions.
So
But
are you
I'm not
talking
agreeing with
about like removing the barriers between states? That way insurers can...
I don't think that's the way to do it.
Are you talking about giving more tax breaks to insurers to enter the market? Because again,
Yeah.
that's what's tossed around a lot. But
Yep.
and
So-
these are the people these are the companies that are making money hand over fist on us.
Yep.
And we're paying the idea of giving them tax breaks is paying them to take our money.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah. So the first thing we can offer them, I think, is certainty, right? I mean, we're ending up by May of next year. We're going to be in a position where people are already. So, long story short, is right now insurers are making decisions about what healthcare plans they're going to offer on the exchanges. And the fact that there's a massive firefight going on in Washington is only hurting all of these exchanges, right? And so the first thing we can do is just guarantee that the exchanges are still going to be around, which right now is not happening. And I think that would actually lead to more people entering the market just if you tell them it's going to be there for another 5 years. The second thing to do is we can actually so there's this great program in Alaska where there's basically something called reinsurance, not to get into too much of the wonky detail, but the federal government basically says that they'll take some of the risk off of the sheets of the insurers, and in exchange, they'll basically get paid for some percentage of the benefits. It's actually shown in Alaska that this has increased enrollment, lowered costs, and at no cost to the federal government. That's a pretty common sense plan that even Republicans say if we rolled out nationwide would actually fix some of these problems. So I don't think it's just giving insurance companies tax cuts. It's just giving them
That's
certainty.
still a subsidy though, right? To doing the reinsurance of a company, that is
The
a
cost to
subsidy.
the insurance, we can get into the details. I can send you the paper that I read that seems like this was a no-brainer, and I'm happy to get into the details. But I do think there's ways we can do it where it's not just like writing another check to an insurance company, which I agree with you, doesn't really sound like the right approach to me either.
I think like a no-brainer would be, though, is if it was just not privatized at all by companies. I mean, like maybe
Yeah.
it works really well in Alaska, but I think Scandinavia has the ideal situation, and I think that is what really saves money, because as long as it's owned by private companies, we are a commodity. Our lives are a commodity. Our lives and our health and everything about us is owned by some company that sees us as a product for them to make money off of. And I think that's inherently wrong.
I'll tell you from a health care provider standpoint, I hate the fact that I have to kowtow and toe the line to make insurers happy. That's not what I do.
Right.
That's not my job.
Right.
That isn't why
And
I'm
that's every healthcare worker I have talked to, because they see the human cost of that.
Yeah, and that's why the best case scenario is expanding Medicaid. I hear you. The only reason we're talking about this private thing is if it happens where we don't get that massive democratic wave and we have to figure something out. But I hear you, and I'm going to go to DC to fight that we make healthcare a right, not a privilege, because I don't want to see a situation ever again where we're actually even conceiving of 100,000 people in this district losing healthcare insurance, because that hurts everybody.
But I feel like we really need to go in there, not like, oh, I got this plan B, you know?
Yeah, I think you're
I
right.
have a question over here.
I did some reading on what they're doing in Europe. There's a lot of single-payer countries, universal health care there. Our cost is over $9,000 per capita per person in the United States. They have better results, and theirs is
Longer lifespan.
about $3,600 per person. It's about 1/3.
Yeah.
If we could find out what they're doing and adapt it for us, the whole thing could be paid for what we're paying.
Absolutely.
Not letting these drug companies gouge them so on.
Yeah, so let's talk about the drug company thing, because that comes up a lot, and it is a huge problem, right? I mean, we see time and time again, and by the way, there is some balancing act there. We want new drugs to come to market, but we want to make sure that we're not paying an arm and a leg, and most importantly, we want to make sure we're not being overcharged. We pay about twice the amount for our prescription drugs in the U.S. as what people pay in Europe, right? And that's not okay. What can we do about it? Two things. One, Bernie Sanders has this great bill, I'm sure you guys all know about it, to actually allow the importation of prescription drugs from Canada, right? Some people talk about safety concerns, which is total crap. Canada has just as many regulations around drugs as we do. That's a no-brainer. But that's a small step in the right direction. It's not the big step. The big step is what we need to do is we need to actually make sure that we can even negotiate against drug companies as a federal government. Republicans have made it that Medicare and Medicaid cannot go up to a drug company and actually say, we want to pay a lower price for this drug. They have completely disallowed our healthcare system as a federal government from even negotiating. That's crazy, and we have to change it. And we do, that's going to dramatically bring down healthcare costs, and every amount we can bring down healthcare costs becomes cheaper and cheaper to make sure that we can actually cover everybody and deliver the care that we need to do. And we can do it without actually changing any of the incentive to develop a drug, which we want to continue to develop because we want to continue to be at the leading edge. So I totally agree on that.
Josh, just to follow up on that. So this might be a challenging question, but I'm sure you're up to it. You were the vice president of investment, right?
Yep.
You still are?
No. Well, no. Doing this thing.
Okay. You're still over there. They're a venture capital. You were venture capitalists over there. You invested in medical companies, and one of them.
I didn't, but yeah.
The company did. What was your title there? Vice president.
Yeah.
So, I work in an international manufacturing company. I know that the vice presidents, even if that's not their specific slice of the pie, they got to know what all the ingredients.
Bright Health was under your name.
So there's a couple of them, right? There's Spinraza. They did the price count.
It was
It was
Ionis.
a case study.
The drug was Spinraza.
Ionis, and they did that. So
Yeah, so that's a company.
So again, it's hard to swear. You're saying we need to do this, but have you held public office before?
Nope. So let's
So
chat about this.
your career was over there, vice president. So right now, it is a true statement that under you, this happened. That Ionis did tremendous price gouging on a medicine for muscular dystrophy, something like that.
It was muscular spinal atrophy, and they charged $125,000 a dose. So that person who needed that treatment had to pay over $700,000 a year. And it was such a clear case of price gouging that it went to court and papers picked up on it, and it has been widely reported. And this is something that is very terrifying for me because I pay thousands and thousands, or would have to without insurance, for my injections to keep me alive.
Yeah, this is a big issue. So first of all, let's demystify what the heck I did in my business career. I went in, I invested, and I helped support small companies become big companies. Best example that's Blakeford, but there were many others. I wasn't involved in this company that you mentioned, but turns out Bessemer invested in 1989, Bessemer was the name of the firm that I worked with, and sold their stake in like 1991. So this was 30 years ago, and the company had no association with my firm as of 24 years ago. And I certainly had no investment, no impact, and the firm that I worked with has been disassociated with the firm for
They do a lot of
decades.
stuff in healthcare, though, right?
What?
Investment, they still do a lot of stuff with healthcare.
They do invest in healthcare companies. They invest.
What's the other one?
It would be the Bright Health Centura.
Right, read that because that was recent.
Yeah.
That
Sure.
was recent. And
Let
now
me finish the drug thing though. So, we figure out the right. So look, I mean, drug prices are a huge problem. They're one of the reasons we can't people say we can't actually cover more people because drug prices are too high, and I am absolutely supportive of allowing importation from Canada and allowing Medicare and Medicaid to actually negotiate with drug manufacturers to bring down prices low. So I think that's super important. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you from right out.
No, so just like I said, you're a newcomer. What? Sorry. So you're a newcomer to this, and we're judging your resume at this point. We have to do.
Please
it.
do.
We have to do it. So Bright Health, they were in Colorado, I
They
believe.
partnered with Centura in Colorado.
But we don't have to get into the details.
Yeah.
The long and skinny of it was your company, your vice president of the company, put money into the Bright Health, which, being some role in insurance, went out and denied abortions, they denied contraceptives, they denied a whole bunch of stuff. It was just really extreme what they
Civil
were doing.
ligations, end of life care.
So we can get into details, but that part is, so most parts of that are not true. So first of all, it's required by law that, so what does this company do, right? This company offered healthcare insurance in individual exchanges, which is something I wish there were more companies doing that. I think that's actually one of the big problems that we have, is that there aren't enough insurers that are going into these health markets. So first on the abortion piece, by law, no company accepting can take federal dollars and give it for abortions. That's something that Republicans pushed through in the 1970s through the Hyde Amendment. And I think that's wrong. I absolutely think, by the way, that doesn't just affect the individual exchanges, that affects Medicaid. That means that our most vulnerable populations of people, folks that are needing resources for their choices, are not getting the resources they need. And when I'm in Congress, I will absolutely sponsor legislation to overturn them. And the reason for that is I'm 100% pro-choice. I believe, and the reason for that is that I think that women should be and are the best judges for what they can actually have with their bodies. And
So pro-choice full 9 terms,
yes,
no exceptions.
no exceptions. And so that's what I think we should do. And the people that are affected by this are the folks that are the most vulnerable in our society. We're on Medicaid. We're on our individual exchanges. So that's not a Bright Health thing. That's nobody in the country is allowed to take federal dollars for abortion.
That
There's
doesn't mean
there's
that
some
they can't.
discretion in that, though.
Yeah.
That's not exactly true.
I mean,
This
I
was-
found articles on that.
This is a religious group that was doing healthcare,
Faith-based.
and I think it's pretty obvious that once you're dealing with something like that, what kind of outcome you're gonna have. So, I just, again, being the resume, I'm just curious about your thought process in this, or the responsibility when you see something like this happening at an organization that you have a leadership role in, because there's going to be obviously a lot of stuff that you're going to disagree with and have the opportunity to stop should you go all the way.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, this is about gauging kind of like the intrinsic values. When is it that you see something wrong and you actually take action?
Yeah.
So I'm just concerned about that.
And I'm going to have to disagree about the truth of this statement because it was in news articles, unless, I don't know, are they fake news?
No, I think we can talk about the details of what happened there. The fact is, no insurance provider is allowed to take federal dollars for abortions. And I think that's wrong.
That's why they can't give out contraceptions or a tubal to a woman who
Contraception is different. In fact,
who just had children, which was my case, and
Yes.
women were denied.
in fact, and actually, every healthcare provider in this country on Obamacare is required to do contraceptions, and Bright Health absolutely does. And that's why saving Obamacare is so important.
So the women were lying.
No,
They
I
couldn't get their
think
services?
no, I don't think there was any lies. I think we can talk about the actual details, but there were no contraceptives that were denied. If they were, we can talk about it. But that's against federal law to deny contraceptives to somebody that has a health plan through the individual exchange, right?
Well, if they were going through this plan, which also, it was in Colorado, so there's not a whole lot of access to healthcare in Colorado because there's a lot of more mountains and scenery than there are people. And they bought up all the clinics in the area, so people didn't have choices unless they wanted to drive way out of state. to get their care, and the company was under the direction of like bishops and archbishops, and I'm not really sure how that power structure works, but they are people who should not be making any sort of decisions about medical care for someone.
Especially for
So let's be clear. So I invested in a health insurance company. That healthcare insurance company partnered with a hospital. You know, they partnered with lots of hospitals. One of these hospitals was a religious hospital, right? I mean, there are a lot of religious hospitals that exist. The insurance company that I invested in, by federal law, was not allowed to have money for abortions on their plan, but is required to have contraceptions in their plan, and absolutely did. And we can chat more about that in individual cases, but just like every other insurance provider does. Things that the religious provider that they do, I don't know about, we can talk about. Like there may be some shady stuff that this healthcare, that this hospital was doing because they're a Catholic hospital, but the insurance provider is a distinct case.
just
The bottom line is, if you had to do that again, would you be more careful about that?
I don't think there was anything wrong that actually happened. I think there was
Okay,
people
but
following the law.
if they were in fact denying contraception coverage,
That is against federal law,
as
and it is
hundreds of women
completely
have
unacceptable
reported
if that happened.
for
yeah,
the record.
I get that, but
Yeah.
I mean those very restrictive religions notoriously
Yes.
deny birth control and pregnancy coverage and abortion and stuff like that. And if you knew that was going to happen ahead of time, is that something that you might have said, I'm
Yeah.
not investing in this? I mean, is at the conscience level?
So that the insurance company had nothing to do with it. The actual provider that they work with lots of hospitals. Some of the hospitals they work with are maybe going to do these things. And if I do,
we understand it's complex. It's about the
No, but look, I mean-
taking it a step further to understand the repercussions that are coming down.
yeah,
the
look,
line.
I believe every woman should have access to contraceptions. It's also federal law, and so if that's being broken, then absolutely that should be a top of face priority, right? And by the way that let's take it back to how this affects this district. You know, Jeff Denham wants to defund Planned Parenthood. That's a huge impact in this district, right? We don't have enough healthcare providers to be turned in some away, right? And by the way, when we talk about defunding Planned Parenthood, what do we mean? Like I said before, there is no federal funding for abortions, so the defunding is not providing federal reimbursement for things like cancer screenings, neonatal health. My younger brother, when he was in utero, he was a baby, or a fetus, his mom took him to Planned Parenthood to get neonatal care. That is one of the most important institutions that we have in the Valley because we don't have enough doctors.
Well, I think everyone around here agrees that we're going to fight for Planned Parenthood, right?
Yeah.
And we're all going to vote against Jeff Denham. But we got another question. Speak up.
My name is Jeff first. I was just wondering if you actually win, are you doing this to be a career politician? And I know, and the reason I question is never
Yeah.
going to be terminal. Let's get that out of our brains. That's never going to happen.
Yeah.
I was wondering, is this a career thing, make money? Because I have seen almost every one of our politicians are owned, and they work to continue to keep power.
Yeah.
And their interests, and it's not our interests anymore. It's the interests of their wants and greed. It just happens. So I was wondering, like, where you see yourself, you win, where do you see yourself 10 years?
It's a hard question. I don't know where I see myself 4 years from now. Look, I think I'm doing this because I'm frustrated. Because I think, like I share many of the feelings of people in this room who sat in November 2016, woke up the next morning after the election and thought, what can I do? I can walk away, I can move to Canada, or I can get more involved. And everybody in this room made the decision to get more involved, and that's the decision that I made too. And so I'm running because I want to make sure that we have access to healthcare, that we have comprehensive immigration reform, that we're moving ahead on some of these jobs and economic opportunity issues that we have. And that's what I'm going to fight for. And I'm not doing this as a stepping stone to some crazy grand vision. I don't have one. I'm doing this because I think there's a lot of people that are hurting today, and I believe that there's something that we can all do to change that, and I'm going to fight for it as much as I can.
So you mentioned change there, though. And,
Yeah.
you know, as a lot of people here know, I went to go see it in San Francisco. and you're raising money with a lot of people who have a lot of money. It's a traditional power structure within the Democratic Party. This place has been notoriously neglected by the Democratic Party.
Can you speak up?
Yeah, sorry. I said that I had went to the meeting, as a lot of you know, to San Francisco to see Josh Hunter, because I've done this a lot, just to see with my own eyes what people do at these elite fundraisers.
Thank you.
And it's a traditional power structure
It's
that
also has
negatively
their attention.
affects this area, because when it comes down to it, politician after politician listens to their donors. They're not going to listen to me because all my money is in my kids and my wife trying to take care of ourselves. Just like everyone over here. You've got people who have to sacrifice everything to send their kids to school. I know people who mortgage their homes to send their kids to college.
Yeah.
So I want to know, I have a hard time understanding you saying you're a change candidate. Obviously, all the 12 candidates are going to be a change from the Democrat. But are you a change candidate within the Democratic Party if you are going to be spending most of your time getting money from the Bay Area donors?
I'm spending most of my time here, so here's what I would say about that.
That's not true. You don't spend most of your time here. But I'm glad that you're spending
We
more.
chat about it. I feel like I see Juan every other day.
Song 3 times.
Yeah, I think that, so I hate it as much as you guys, that we have to raise money to win political office. I support a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United, because I think it is absolutely insane that money has such an influence in politics. I think that's wrong. That said, we have a mystery here, right? We have a district that voted for Clinton in 2016, that voted for Obama in 2012, and we have a Republican congressman. Why?
Because they don't turn out in off-election years. It's turnout.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even in 2016 though.
2016 wasn't an offer. I'll tell you what it was. So the district was horribly gerrymandered in 2010, 2011 citizens redistricting.
Antigua we
Citizens
lost our
redistricting,
very popular
right?
congressman.
Made it a much more, made it a very purple district. You know, it's not red, it's not blue, it's a very, very purple district.
Yeah.
Turlock is still pretty red. You know, Tracy is a lot more blue, but overall the district is purple. But Denham's been riding his incumbency. He's been keeping his head low, and he hasn't really been doing much until now, you know, riding the Trump
Kill that
train.
town hall, right, Donna?
Yeah,
Where you at,
I mean,
Donna?
that,
Fort is right here.
so, you know, the district is his to lose, but, you know, I guess everybody here has the same concerns as Anthony, is that is the person that steps forward is going to be somebody that is beholden to somebody in the Bay Area that has their own agenda, or is it going to be an agenda driven by people from this area?
It has to be from this area, right? I mean, for two reasons. One is, my biggest problem with Jeff Denham is that he puts party over his constituents. This is a pragmatic district that wants solutions. Not all of our problems are right-left, right? We have certain, like, jobs is something that I think everybody in this county agrees that we need more jobs, we need better jobs. We need an advocate that's going to actually fight for those issues. So the problem now that we have is somebody that's putting party over constituents, and I got to make sure I don't make the same mistake. And I'm, pledging that I'm not. Like, I want to make sure that I put people in this room and elsewhere in Turlock and Modesto ahead of my party. And sometimes that's going to mean saying no to the Democratic Party. Sometimes it's going to be saying no to other people.
Is it going to be saying no to donors though?
It is. It is.
Because obviously we saw John Ossoff raise more money than anyone else. He still lost.
Yeah.
He still lost because it's a turnout game.
Yes.
And the Democratic Party, sorry.
No, it's okay. I want to know if your experience has been addressed in a way that, okay, because we all read about what happened to Anthony in San Francisco, and it's just like, as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't vote for you after that.
Yeah.
Like, what happened in San Francisco? How and why did that happen? And why did you not stop it?
Has there been an apology?
I'll fill you in. So I'll fill
He's
you in.
already filled us in.
We don't need to hear it again.
Some of them don't know.
I haven't heard it.
Okay, if you haven't heard it, I'll talk to them.
Well, I meant to send you.
No, I'll give you the sense. So, yeah, so we had an event in San Francisco. Anthony came. I gave a talk very similar to what I did tonight. Anthony shouted some questions over the next speaker. We told him there was going to be room for Q&A afterwards, and Anthony complied. It was totally fine. And then another attendee at the event started giving Anthony some really angry, evil glances. My campaign manager right here stepped between them to try to act as a buffer. And I thought that was going to be the end of it, and it wasn't. Anthony got very intimidated by the, I think that's the word you used, by the stares that this other guy was given. The other guy was being a real asshole, and Anthony ended up, shouting again over the speaker, and the host asked him to leave, which he was fine with. And
Josh,
then
I was actually asking that guy to stop, and the people around him to ask him to stop, because saying mean glances, it was a really large guy who got in my face.
Two men having physical intimidation, it's a threat. I mean, have you been anywhere in your life? That's a threat.
I hear you, and that's why my campaign manager said, and I hear you.
And
And
not
he-
exactly step between. He asked for it to stop, but Josh Lord did what he could, and I appreciate that, Josh.
Yeah, and I thought that was the end of it. And what do I think about it?
But there was more. There was more.
Outside, yeah.
No, the woman put her hands on you.
Right,
Inside,
yeah.
and then
So,
turned you
yeah,
out.
as I was being shouted down and told to be quiet, as I was asking for help from that guy who was intimidated, which was he was a big white guy. I was one of the only Latino people there, a constituent that multiple people knew. So it's hard to race out of that. The hostess came out, grabbed me and drug me out, and then proceeded to shout at me and try to belittle me outside. It was
While Anthony was trying to leave the property.
yeah.
You
No,
know,
after I left the property.
after even.
Just a phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, and I emailed you that night. We tried to get together.
But you never
I gave you-
apologized.
Look, I can't apologize for someone else's actions. I'm sorry this guy was
Actually,
being
you
an
can,
asshole.
because when I had a birthday party for my children, two of those children got into a fight. Well, they were inside and we were outside with the bounce house. And they came out crying. One of them was crying because the other girl had said some very mean things and had intimidated her. And it broke my heart. And I felt so bad. I not only apologized to that little girl, I apologized to her parents. And I told her that if they were to ever come back to our house, I would make sure that nothing like that ever happened again. And I would be right there if she needed anything, she could tell me. Because that's what a leader does. And that's what you do when you host a party.
I think.
I think with the apology too, it's not that we'd like you to apologize for the rude behavior of that large white man who is very intimidating and just how the whole situation panned out, but just to recognize that it did occur at an event that you were the speaker of, and just to empathetic. I'm sorry, I worked in customer service for years, and people say, well, this happened, I didn't do it, but I'm sorry that this happened. I am in charge of this for them, so I will take ownership and express empathy, and how can we fix this? So I appreciate you coming out here, and Anthony's one of my good friends, and I wasn't there, and I don't get too involved, but I personally would appreciate, even though it didn't happen to me, and you weren't the one who did it, if you would just have an empathetic, formal statement, issue an apology.
Watch this. So if you're Hispanic here, raise your hand, right? Has anyone complained to you about speaking Spanish in public?
Yeah.
All the time, right? You get that. You get that, right?
And as a minority, stare from a large white man isn't just a stare.
You see the trucks with the flags flying off of them, and right.
I'm white and I'm intimidated.
Okay, John.
Yeah, look, Anthony, as I told you on the phone, I'm really sorry that happened at one of our events. This guy was being an asshole.
Right, because you're right?
And look, I think it's really important that we have events where everyone's voice is heard. And I'm committed to that, right?
But when your constituent was there, you didn't do anything.
Look,
he didn't have money to give you, but he was your constituent, the person you want. You want to do his speak for him.
Look,
but you did not speak for him.
The last I saw this.
We got Ralph in.
Go ahead. Well, I'm his wife, so I get to usurp his position.
Proxy.
You said that he shouted over people, and we all know Anthony from working through the Bernie Sanders campaign, lots of rallies, lots of all kinds of stuff. He is a very polite, I've never heard Anthony shout, period, let alone shout over someone, so that kind of offends me that you would say that, like, it's his fault, number one. Let me finish, please. And then the fact that you can't stop and recognize a person of color, and he's like one of the few persons of color in the room, right? Who represents your district. You're with people who are not in your district. And so I feel like it was your moral, ethical responsibility to stop what was occurring and say, I'm really sorry this is happening to you, let's address the situation right now. Because it's not right that he got thrown out of a meeting. He wasn't being aggressive or upsetting what was going on, you know?
He was invited. He had an invitation.
It's just really like,
I get that I was assertive with my question because
well,
I was being ignored.
yes, but you
Anthony
know,
was shouting over a speaker.
I was assertive in my questions because, again, if those people who know what it's like to do this, sometimes you have to bend the rules to get your voice heard, especially if you are someone who is a person of color, if you're part of the LGBTQ community, if you're a woman, good God, how many women have to bend the rules that way you get heard?
right. So
Yeah.
you
Women question. So there have been multiple studies done of this nature that women are perceived to speak more even though they dominate less of the conversation. So I understand I'm a white person, and for somebody to say that being in a crowd of white people is intimidating, that makes me upset. That makes me sad because I don't think that way. I don't feel that way. I've never felt that way. But what I'm like, and I understand that you may disagree with the methods and things, but I think that you do understand that Anthony wasn't trying to be disrespectful or rude, and I would like to see somebody advocating on behalf of people that aren't being rude and disrespectful. I think that, just because somebody is speaking up more loudly doesn't mean they're being disrespectful.
I agree with you. Yeah, look, I mean, like I said, the last I saw of the matter, campaign manager was getting between the two of them, and I thought that was the end of it. When I heard what happened afterwards, gave Anthony a call and said exactly what I said here in this room, that I'm really sorry that this happened at our event. And I continue to say that because it does upset me, right? I mean, I'm running because we have too many people.
I don't think that's quite how the call went. I mean, it seemed like a lot of blame shifting to Anthony for it being...
You equivocated. You said that I was being rude, and I mean, I understand you got to do what you got to do, but like I said, we're doing the interview. We're looking for certain followers. We're looking for leadership. And
Let me interject, and maybe that wasn't the venue for a assertive interview of somebody from the point of view. I mean, he was trying to do what politicians got to do, right? And maybe this is the venue for these type of harder questions.
But that doesn't mean he deserves that behavior.
Of course it doesn't. But who among us hasn't kicked themselves for not saying the right thing?
That's why I go back and apologize when I feel so terrible.
And I do too, and that's why we have conversations. But I feel like you guys are.
The conversation about that. This isn't our Rev Turlock meeting. The conversation.
Just in my personal opinion, reason Higman did win the election is he never gained the support of the progressive, because his whole campaign was based on attacking Denham, never on creation. Okay, so if you're going to win this district, you're going to have to gain the president's support of those progressives to win. You should take a point from everyone's role model there, Bernie Sanders, when he was faced with the same situation in Washington with Black Lives Matter. He stepped aside and gave him the podium instead of rejecting him. In your case, you rejected a person of color in a situation where you could have brought in someone from the district and given him his voice and been respectful. You didn't do that. That's a mistake.
I don't think that's so first of all, I agree with you that we want to run a campaign that focuses on issues that are broadly applicable. You know, I support Medicare for all. I support taking dark money out of politics. I support a lot of, all the great work on prescription drug prices. I think the issues that I talk about, immigration, jobs, and healthcare, are broadly applicable, and they're applicable to folks that march for Bernie Sanders and not.
What about the immigrants march, right? You were at our immigrants march. Juan was there. He was the one who organized it. We had a lot of people. We hung out, took a few pictures, and you took off. You didn't march with us.
Why didn't you march with us?
Yeah.
You want to represent
And he said that farm worker that you were talking to, and he's,
Yeah, look, so that was like the first day of our campaign. I did 4 events that day. I did the Cinco de Mayo parade, did the Immigrant March, I went to the Farmers Market, I went to the library. I was only able to spend 30 minutes and at the Immigrants March because I talked to Juan and I got in too late to get a speaking spot. So I said,
yeah, but the thing though is you were gonna hang out and you could speak, right, Juan?
No.
You asked, can I speak?
yeah, look, I mean, I hear you. I mean, if I had to do that thing over again.
It was a mistake.
Yeah, I agree. It was mea culpa. If I had to do that over again, I would not spend a little bit of time at a lot of events. I think we need to spend more time at one of them, right? We need to make sure we're investing in building those relationships. That was like the first day of my campaign. And I agree with you. If I had to do it over again, I would have spent, 2 hours at the Immigration March instead of 30 minutes at a lot of different places.
Somebody else would have complained it was going to happen.
It could be, but still, you can't just use the immigrant community for a photo op. That's just not cool. And it's again, it's just part of the interview process. I'm just trying to see what kind of values you have on this.
we do have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Hey, I was wondering, what is your position on immigration reform and border control? And once you provide that, could you actually expand on what you're going to do about it?
Yeah.
Citizenship.
Yeah, firmly support comprehensive immigration reform, which means a path to citizenship for the 40,000 people in this district who are our economic and social fabric, people that kids went to school with me, whose parents work in our small businesses, who serve in our military. We had a bill in 2013, passed the U.S. Senate. Obama said he was going to sign it. It had a path to citizenship in it, and it reformed, not just that, but also the H-1B visa process and everything else. It's a great bill. The reason it's not a law today is because of people like Jeff Denham who voted against it in the U.S. Congress. That's wrong. So what would I do about it? I would take that bill, I'd bring it back, and I'd vote yes on it. And this is a moral thing, because I think it's critical to people that have been in our communities for decades, that are working for us, with us, that are forming our small businesses, that are serving in our militaries, have an opportunity to be productive citizens. But I also think it's an economic issue, right? And when we talk about not enough jobs here, a lot of unemployment, one of the things we can do about that is make immigration a lot easier, right? Something like 50% of the Fortune 500 companies have, an immigrant as a top 3 or 4 member of that team. Many of the small businesses that are created in America are created by immigrants. Our biggest problem here in the Valley is we don't have enough companies that are starting here, and what we can do, one thing that we can do to make that easier is by making it creating that path to citizenship. So I think it's a huge issue. It's not just a moral issue. It's not just the right thing to do. It's also the good thing to do for our economy.
So I don't.
Yeah, good follow.
Yeah, could you actually go further in depth with that? Because I understand the H-1B1 visa is very important. A lot of businesses use that, but unfortunately that's not a majority of undocumented immigrants in this country.
Two things. Yeah.
So what are you going to do to actually expand on that? Like every politician that's ever ran in this district or try to run against them talk about that they're going to expand on immigration reform and pathways.
Even Jeff Denham's for a comprehensive.
Supposedly.
Right?
Supposedly.
So I mean, there has to be.
So in that case, I mean, what will you do specifically on that? Will you create legislation that will, are you going to try to increase funding to have more individuals to go through the process of visas? And then also, what would you like to do with border control?
Yeah, so there's two main parts of immigration reform, right? The H-1B issue, which I agree, it's different. It's like stapling a visa to every single person that graduates in this country with a STEM degree. We need to make it really easy for those people to stay. Then there's the path to citizenship for people that are already here, the 40,000 people here in our district that are undocumented. What we need to do about that is we need to create a path to citizenship for people that don't have a criminal record, that keep their noses clean, bring them out, create some mechanism to bring them out so they can run their small businesses in the open, so they can serve in our military in the open. So we don't have people that are worried that ICE deportations are up 40% in the last 6 months. That has a real impact here more than anyone else. What's the difference between me and Jeff Denham? Yeah, he talks about it, and then he goes back in D.C. and in 2013, the closest we've ever been to comprehensive immigration reform in this country, he voted against it. right? He voted against bringing that to a vote on the floor of the U.S. Congress. That's not right. So what's the difference? I mean, it's again, he also, by the way, for people that were at his town hall, he also said he wouldn't vote to take away protections for pre-existing conditions. And then 2 weeks later, he did. So, you know, what's the record there? I mean, we have somebody who says one thing here in the district and then does exactly the opposite elsewhere. It's somebody that votes with his party ahead of his constituents. What would I do differently? I would actually take that bill that we had in 2013 that was so close, that we had near bipartisan support, that passed the U.S. Senate, and I would push it forward because I think that's what we need.
So, just following up on that, you talked about people who are quitting, and you mentioned ICE.
Yeah.
So, Sheriff Christensen, we talked about it earlier, he has no problems here in this county about cooperating with ICE. And he feeds a lot of misinformation to people, but people are terrified. So, what is your opinion on in California, SB 54, that's a statewide sanctuary city bill, and then efforts overall to stop ICE and to put barriers up to protect people, even if they have minor infractions, because they are taking people with minor infractions and they're sending them back, they're tearing apart families, and they're having kids becoming wards of the state. You're just, the whole system is absolutely inhumane.
Yeah.
In addition to, this isn't even going into the detention centers that they have, where they're separating kids from their parents.
Yeah,
So,
it's inhumane. It's the wrong thing to do more. Yeah. And
look, those are the specific things, right? Those are the things that people are terrified of.
yeah,
So
it's wrong.
the path to citizenship, there's a lot of stuff there. But I want to see specific actions and proposals of that's going to challenge that power structure that's there. Are you going to go against police unions and the unions for the border patrol? They have a lot of clout.
I hear you. Yeah, look, so the first person that ever passed a sanctuary city policy, basically saying they're not going to cooperate with ICE, was a Republican sheriff in Los Angeles 30 years ago. This was not a guy who was a huge fan of liberal policies in general. Why did he do it? He did it because he thought it was the right thing for the LA Police Department for 2 reasons. One is he didn't want his cops focusing on low-level issues like, you know, whether or not somebody's undocumented, but wanted to focus them on real crimes, right? The reason we actually pay our cops here in the first place. And second, he wanted to create trust with the immigrants, with the immigrant community, right? He wanted to make sure that when somebody had a problem to come forward, that they had a crime to report, that they felt comfortable going to a cop and their immigration status would not be questioned. And that is good for the non-immigrant community. By the way, we're all immigrants, but like people that are documented. It's also good for people that are undocumented, right? I mean, like, we need to make sure that these communities are protected, that they feel comfortable coming to the police. So, absolutely, I think, you know, I agree with nearly every sheriff of every major city in America who says that they will not, in Chicago, in LA, in New York City, in Boston, every major city that says this is, you know, we should not be cooperating with ICE because it's not right for our police force. We want our police force focused on what matters and creating trust with immigrants so they can actually come forward when they have an issue to report.
Right, but those sheriffs are in major metropolitan areas. We're talking about Adam Christensen right here in the state of West County. That's a different piece, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So you talk about
County.
Huh?
Merced
County, and whose deputies act as officers for a lot of the places like Patterson, like Kmart. So.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean what is the federal government's role in that? There are policies that say that there are Republican legislators that are pushing legislation that says they will take money away from police departments that do not cooperate with ICE. So what is something that I could do? I would absolutely vote against that, right? I think taking money away from police departments that are doing what's in there, what they feel is the best public safety of their community is absolutely wrong.
So just one last thing, and then we'll open it up to another question. So you talked about building trust with the immigrant community. What have you done for the immigrant community in Toronto?
Not as much as you. I don't know if anybody has. Yeah, look, I mean, I'm talking about what values are important to me, right, and policies that I'm going to put forward. I think immigration is one of the biggest areas of this district being misrepresented. It's one of the best examples we have of
So,
what we...
beyond that, then, what about, have you done anything in this area? Have you
Look, I'm frustrated about it enough that I'm running for Congress.
Again, it's just the inexperience issue. I wanted to know. If
Yeah, look, I mean, my experience is in working in business, right? I mean, so what are the key components of my platform? It's healthcare, immigration, and jobs. And what have I done with my career? I've worked with little businesses, trying to grow them into big businesses, like the Blue Acres of the world. And I think that's the perfect experience that we want for a community like ours.
That's not the real experience that we have here, though, right? I mentioned the recession. The past 10 years have been brutal for people over here.
And that's why it's more important than ever, right? That's why
it's just important that there's an understanding of the immediate needs and fears and frustrations that are here. And I was just curious if during that time when you were building your career, if you were doing anything over here.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the experience that is most important for this district is being able to figure out what we can do to build more jobs here. So folks that are graduating from Stan State a couple blocks away feel like they have hope, feel like they don't need to leave this community. I think that's the most important thing we can do, and I think that's what I spent my career doing.
There's another question over
Angela
here.
has a question.
Yeah, so how, should you get elected, how do you envision yourself staying in contact with your constituents and making sure that you're serving us and not in Washington and not...
Do you have a story of working with Jeff Denham's constituent office? I feel like that's usually a precursor to when I hear somebody tell a story about how they've gotten hung up on or been ignored.
If you more than one events where he's...
Yeah, look, I'm here, and I'm going to keep coming. I don't know how to convince you of that other than just taking my word for it, but I think that what is important is making sure that somebody that's elected stands up for everybody, whether they voted for you or not, and making sure you listen to their concerns. And I think, every person I've talked to in this district has a story of asking Jeff Denham's office for something and being hung up on, being ignored, going to an office hours where he had promised to show up and he didn't. To me, that's a record of broken promises. And what can we do better? Well, we can make sure that we actually are upholding our promises, that we're showing up for work, whether or not it's with people that like our votes or not. Yeah.
I want to know, I'm a big white guy, over 6 foot. I've been accused of being intimidating in the past. So.
You are.
So I apologize for that. But I'm his big white guy. Okay, so it's but we're living in a valley right now where, and you haven't mentioned this at all, and this is going to conflict with jobs, and it's going to conflict with other things. But we're living in a valley right now where the air is killing our kids. Asthma is up. You can't, I will tell you, I've spent a lot of my life in New York in the environmental community. You would not be able to drink the brown water that you're drinking in most of this valley in other parts of the country. Okay? You now have an administration who's looking to kill the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, and I got to tell you, look at the asthma increases to our children in the valley. All right? Where do you stand on environmental issues, understanding that those environmental issues, having spent 42 years now in the environmental field, are going to be in conflict with your jobs and with other aspects that you're talking about? What's your position on the environment?
Yeah, I mean, I had childhood asthma as a kid. My brother had childhood asthma. It's no secret that this valley has the worst air quality in the country.
And the water, everybody drinks bottled water. That knows.
I feel like you told me it was sick, but I got
Turlock has the best water.
No.
Yeah.
Turlock's got a couple of problems too, but we won't go there. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I don't think it's in conflict with what I want to do from a business angle. I think, we can actually make sure that we're enforcing the clean air and clean water regulations that are on the books in a way that doesn't actually penalize businesses here. I think the vast majority of businesses are pretty good about it. And so I refuse to kind of accept the premise of the question, which is that these, the environment and jobs are somehow in conflict. I mean, we can have both.
Every farmer and every dairyman is going to tell you.
But what about the environment? What about fracking and...
Yeah, I mean...
You support a ban on
yeah.
fracking?
California is supposed to be one of the elite all right, one of the progressives.
Yeah.
And you guys are fracking from wall to wall throughout
Yeah,
the state.
8,000 fracking wells.
Okay?
Yeah.
Known fracking.
Yeah, yeah. I think we need a future whereby 2050, this was the Sanders-Merkley bill that exists at the federal government, and I'm a big supporter of it. What it basically says is by 2050, we want 80% of our energy coming from renewable sources. That's, you know, no fracking, that's no oil, that's no coal, that's no natural gas, which is fracking, and I'm a big supporter of it. I think that's the way we do it. I think if we ban fracking outright, what we're going to do is we're just going to get more of the bad stuff. We're going to get more coal. We're going to get more oil. And I don't think that's actually going to be...
New York's not. New York banned fracking, and they've seen no increases. In fact, they shut down 4 of the coal power plants and are getting ready to shut down the Indian Point nuclear power plant.
Then they're doing it the right way.
And we got one over here.
Tesla has plans that would
Yes.
cover, supply the United States 100% renewable energy.
Yes. We can't put all our hopes in Tesla, but God, I hope Elon Musk figures it out. Because, yeah, I think that's right. I think that's what we
It's
need.
all about the money.
Yeah, yeah. Karen, did you have something to say? And
Yeah,
then we need to wrap up.
yeah.
We'll wrap up.
I understand. There are a lot of candidates that are espousing the same sorts of things. I mean, there's a baker's dozen, and they're all saying the same things. And, Juan, how many times have I seen you since February?
How many times?
How many times have I seen you since February? Donna, how many times have I seen you since February? Right? So, like, I don't think you've been to the Valley as much as you're saying. Because we do stuff, I've had like 4 events already this week, just this week. So I see a lot of the money coming in from out of district, which is not bad in and of itself. But when you say, oh, you're always in the Valley, and I'm attending just myself 4 events a week and constantly texting people in this room, people out of this room about other events because I'm one human being and can't do all of them. I mean, there are too many events even. So those are the events that if you're in the Valley, you're not going to those. And those are the events that we're doing, that real change is going to happen. And that's what distinguishes the people who espouse things that are against denim and the people who are going to advocate for us. You know, it's, if you're out here building these relationships, I didn't even know most of the people in this room before January, and now some of them are like my family. So these are the events that you need to be going to. These are the people you need to have relationships with, because otherwise you say you're in the Valley all the time and you've seen Juan 3 times in your life.
I think a little more than 3 times.
That's just not, just, you're not seeing the people who are doing work. Maybe you're seeing people with pocketbooks, but you're not seeing the people who are doing the work.
I hear you. Look, 2 things. I mean, I live just a couple blocks away. Add me to your text list. I'd love to come to more events. Every event I get invited to, I try to show up for. Is that an event?
September 18th, Pizza Factory, 7 p.m.
Already talked to Janet. We're already coming. There you go. We're trying to come out. We've been to Katika, Patterson, Tracy, Modesto, Turlock. We've been everywhere. We're trying to go everywhere. This is a big district,
It's
but
a big district, but the activist community is pretty surprisingly small, and we all know each other. Yeah, Rebecca?
Yeah. So I agree with what she said about advocating. I keep hearing you say, I'm going to vote for this, I'm going to vote for that. Are you going to be out there advocating, talking to people, saying, the things that we want to push forward? I think the most important thing is people hearing you and saying, I'm for this, and it brings more people along also.
It's about action, right? It's about action.
It's
Because
about action, advocating.
that's the difference. That's the difference from what happened. A lot of these people were like me a couple years ago, and were fine just watching the news.
Yeah.
But now that's changed. And so if we want, what we're looking for is someone who is going to actually be part of that change, and not someone who's going to promise that change.
And I think too, just more than advocating for your campaign or just, only going out to not just when people are involved in politics. Me personally, I'd like to see you more involved in community events. But I don't mean like farmers market. I mean, there's a lot going on in the community. Modesto, Charlotte, everywhere, all the way up north, south. And if you're going to run for the district, we also want to see how you hanging out with the Latino community? What events are you going to? Not just going to a Secret Amount parade. Like, go for something that's actually going to make a change.
We have Mo Pride?
We had, Mo Pride this year. I didn't see there. I had a booth there for Each Mind Matters for mental health as a facilitator for San Jose County LGBTQ. I haven't seen you at any of our events. And
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm only one.
I know how Jeff Denham feels about us, but I want to know, how are you going to support our LGBTQ?
Yeah, that's a great way, I think, to end, because look, I mean, I've been to a lot of stuff, I give you my itinerary, but ultimately the only way this is going to work is over the next 18 months if I show it, and you keep seeing me over and over and over and over and over again.
And I don't mean just as a photo op, but I want to see you actually
I agree.
personally be involved. How are you
Yeah.
going to help out? And money talks, yeah, but there's a lot of dirty work that requires volunteer work. And
I
that's
agree.
hard, right?
So that's what I was going to, so look, I mean, this is not something I can do. This is not something I can do on my own. My email is josh@harderforcongress.com. There is an event you think I should show up to, let me know. And I'll do my best to be there. I can't make any promises because I spend a lot of my time in a car driving between different cities. But we have something going on in some city all the time. And so, a lot of those are not public events. They're small events like this where there's 10 people in a room. Some of those are large public events. But we're going to be doing more and more and more because I completely agree with what you guys are saying, that the number one most important thing for a candidate in my position is to show up and to build those relationships. And so we've been a lot of places and we're going to go to more. And if there's things that you think we should be going to, please let me know. Please text it to me. Please, please email.
Okay. Vic is next thing.
So this is not my question, but this is a mistake I see with a lot of candidates. Even if you can't even show up to the meeting or the event, you still need to send someone from your delegation or your assembly from there.
Agreed.
And that happens all the time. People say they will, and that never happens. I know it happened under Eggman over both terms. Under both campaign managers, they would not be willing to send people over or what have you. And I mean, if you want to actually show to us, members of the community, that you really care about our specific groups, then you need to do that. And I know you obviously you're one person, right? You can't make everything. You need to send someone over, and they have to have that communication and be that delegate for you.
Completely agree. We are trying to hire that person right now. You will all be seeing them a million times and be sick of them soon. I could not agree with you more. And I hope to show up as much stuff as I can, but stuff that I can't show up to, I want there to be somebody else there. And ultimately can only be done if I, hear about events from you guys. But yeah, I think...
Actually, we post everything on Facebook widely, so it's pretty easy
There you
to
go.
find out about our events.
All right, so we look forward to meeting whoever this is. I hope they're hired from within the district. And we'll wrap it up there. So thank you very much, Josh,
Yeah.
for your time.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys.